Special edition of the Fenway Rundown to close out the week. Chris Cotillo here along with Sean McAdam, and we have a special guest. It is John Berman from CNN News Central, a native of Carlisle, Massachusetts, a huge Red Sox fan. And John, usually when we have guests on who host a much bigger show and a much bigger platform than ours, I have not been a guest on that show. So the fact that you're coming on my show after I came on yours is one of the all-time great surprises.
I think it's fitting, and it's really, you say, a much bigger show. To me, the biggest shows are always about the Red Sox, so this is as big as it can get, and it's an honor to be with you guys. And Chris, it was so great having you on the show back during the pandemic. So thank you for what you did then, and thank you for what you do now. And Sean, I've been a big fan for forever.
Yeah, I
Thank
can't
you.
believe that was over 5 years ago. But I think luckily the world's in a little bit better place than when we did that. So, and the conversation on this will be probably a little lighter, I would guess. Um, but we'll start with just your day-to-day indulgence with the Red Sox. Are you still, even as busy as you are, a 162 guy?
I'm pretty much a 162 guy. The math gets complicated because I do a morning show, right? So I have to wake up every day at 4 a.m. So when I go to bed later than 9:30, it's bad. It takes something out of my hide. So I'm basically a 162 guy, though I go to sleep a lot in the seventh inning. And West Coast road trips kill me. But there are times I used to have an even earlier schedule years ago. There were times when I would wake up because I'd have to wake up at like 1:15, 1:30. There are times that during West Coast swings I'd be waking up and they'd still be playing.
Yeah, that is probably not an ideal way to watch a game.
John,
No, no, not at all.
you grew up, as Chris mentioned, in Carlisle, kind of a neighboring town from my hometown of Chelmsford. Talk a little bit, if you would, about your fandom growing up, your introduction to the team, some memories going to Fenway, favorite players, just stuff that sticks out from your childhood and growing up a Red Sox fan in Massachusetts.
So I was born in 1972. So I was 6 years old in 1978, which I vividly remember. I remember the 1978 season, the Boston Massacre, and obviously the Bucky Dent game. And one of my earliest childhood memories, period, is that our school, Carlisle Public Schools, had an assembly because it was an afternoon game. The one game playoff against the Yankees was an afternoon game. We had an assembly. We sat as a school and watched the beginning of the game together on a TV set that they rolled in. And then we all got on the bus and went home. And I remember at home, my entire extended family was there watching the rest of that terrible, awful one game playoff. So I vividly remember that. I also remember that the Carlisle Public Schools spaghetti supper fundraiser, they had a raffle that year. And I won the raffle for a box of Charlie's Angels cards from the Carlisle Superette, which was the one store in Carlisle. And I went in with this coupon to the Carlisle Superette to pick up my box of Charlie's Angels cards. And the guy behind the counter says, "You know what? I'm looking at you. I'm going to give you a box of baseball cards instead." So for that year, I got a whole box of baseball cards. So my baseball card collection is heavily weighted toward that year. So it's an important year in my memory because they were, the team, of all the cards that I have, happy and sad because of obviously what happened.
And 78 obviously did not have a happy ending, as you
No.
suggested, but it was a compelling season with a great year from Jim Rice, an MVP season that year. Was he a favorite player? Take us back to that time growing up and guys that particularly you followed.
He was literally my single favorite player. I was always a Jim Rice guy. Not that you had to choose. It wasn't like you had to choose Rice or Lynn or Fisk. At least I don't remember it like that. But I was always, a Jim Rice guy. I wore number 14 whenever I could. Loved him, dearly. Remember, the fabled stories, that I don't even remember are true. That he like broke a bat by check swinging, or that they hit a line drive that left the bat 2 feet off the ground, or they hit the center field wall 2 feet off the ground, never having deviated. Stories like that I used to love, or that he could drive a golf ball, 600 yards. I was a huge fan of his, and all the way to '86, which was another actually great season for him too. Was my favorite player through those two great eras.
How much over the years, and as you've grown in your career, have you um, gotten to meet some of those guys, whether it be Jim Rice or guys that you grew up rooting for?
A great question. Never met Jim Rice. I met I one year I got to go down to spring training. I think after the 2004 baseball season. So I was down in 2005 for some reason for work for a spring training game. And I got to meet some of the guys then. And I had one more spring training for work where I was covering something. I think maybe I did a story for Good Morning America when I was at ABC. And I got to go shoot some of spring training. I got to meet David Ortiz. And I have a picture with Kevin Youkilis, who at that time in that era was my favorite player. But only around the margins, right? I'm a fan, mostly, and I love you guys report every day on the Red Sox. For me, I appreciate just being a fan and not having to be a journalist about this, because I don't want to be objective, right? And I don't want to be fair. I absolutely want to be 100% partial and irrational about the whole thing. So I want to stick to the fandom on it.
That 2005, excuse me, spring training, I remember vividly. There was a Yankee Red Sox game at the old City of Palms Park, which they no longer play at, that people slept out for standing room tickets. I mean, you could argue that in spring training '04 or even spring training '05, months after they finally won a championship, that that was the absolute height of Red Sox mania in New England. It probably the franchise has probably never been more popular than it was inside those 12 months. And I remember fans sleeping out on the sidewalk next to City of Palms Park to get tickets or standing room only tickets and admission to a Red Sox Yankee spring training game, which, as you know, is not exactly representative of a regular season game. You're not getting Derek Jeter to ride the bus from Tampa for 2 hours, or Jorge Posada or any of the other stars. This was a bunch of Yankee prospects and maybe a veteran or two, and yet it had the excitement and the fan fervor of a playoff game. Such was their popularity that spring.
Yeah, really, between 2003 and 2004, those two seasons, it was a frenzy. I mean, it was at fever pitch, not to quote the movie or the Corby book, but it was really just at this immense fever pitch. And I live in New York, right? I was in New York for those 2 years, which was hard to be a Red Sox fan in New York, particularly in '03. And really, honestly, for most of '04 until it all miraculously turned around. But I just remember it being so intense. Being a Red Sox fan was a 24-hour a day experience. And at that point, it was emails, not text messages, but the email chains I was on with my friends, every day about the Red Sox. One of my friends actually printed them and bound them in a book after they won the World Series, really to show us the level of psychosis that we all experienced. Nothing has matched that since then, which is fine, because I don't think it was healthy. Like, I wasn't well during that time. I can't believe how it all ended, but it was. I think we all needed it to end that way to get through it.
You said you want to be irrational. You said you want to be not fair and not a journalist covering the Red Sox, but that doesn't mean you can't give us a take on the 2025 group. I'm in Philly. The last two nights have not gone great. We'll post this for Thursday morning, so the series will have been over by the time people listen. But a really good run into the All-Star break. Struggles out of it. Trade deadline coming up. If you're Craig Breslow, John, what do you do?
Now, you'll be shocked to know I've thought a lot about this. As a fan, I'm nervous about trading one of my everyday players, even for a higher end pitcher. I'm nervous about. I know they have an excess outfielder. I'm nervous about trading, Jaron Duran or Wilyer Abreu. Right now, particularly Duran, because of what he seems to mean in the dugout, in the clubhouse. He's the guy who puts the Wally the Green Monster head on the player when they hit the home run. He seems to be driving some of the spirit of the team. And I'd be nervous if I'm Craig Breslow about pushing the kind of the clubhouse vibe, which you guys are way more familiar than I am. What I assume to be, you guys see it firsthand, but I'd be careful. I'd be concerned about upsetting that, particularly after what you tested them on with the Devers trade. I mean, that said, they have a unique level of assets to make some kind of a deal here. And I think I heard you guys talking earlier in the week about the three things that you think they need. The starting pitcher, the first baseman, and the bullpen. I assume they're going to get some sampling of all three. I don't know how high or end they'll be. I really feel like they need another bat. I kind of think, I mean, it needs to be really first base. I think they need to figure out some way to get a little more production out of that position because Abraham Toro, God bless him, you can't expect him to play at the level that he was. Romy Gonzalez, can't have an OPS of, 1100 for the full year and already doesn't. I think they need to have a consistent player there who can field the position. I mean, they've been lucky that they've been getting through some of those games that can field the position and produce. So I'd like to see them get a little more offense out of that. That's what I'd like to see him do. I promise you he'll get a relief pitcher or five. So that's
The
what I
hope
think.
being that
Yeah.
they're more consequential than Lucas Sims and Luis Garcia of last year's deadline.
It seems like they need someone a little bit north of that, right?
Yeah.
I'm high on Alcala and in Hicks to an extent, although he may need an off season for the Red Sox to get him and work with him. It's sort of some days he pitches. I'm like, oh, he's the closer of the future. Other days I'm like, he needs to throw a strike if he's going to come in the ninth inning. But yeah, one more reliable bullpen arm would be great. And as far as the starters go. Yeah, I love Richard Fitz. Like I'm a Richard Fitz guy. For a long time, all he was doing was giving you 5 or 6 innings, keeping you in every game. But after Fitz, it falls off, right? They've gone through the backup plans for the number 5 starter, and I don't
Right.
think there's anyone left in the system who can fill that void. So they better get someone just
Yeah.
in case, either to replace him or to fill it.
Yep. Yeah, but no Dobbins, no Crawford, and maybe no Houck the rest of the way. All of whom were looked upon as depth options that they could count on in the second half. Maybe Patrick Sandoval surfaces, but it's hard to count on too much from a guy who's coming off Tommy John surgery middle of the year.
Yeah, I haven't even heard anything about him. I don't know if you guys have heard anything about his progress.
Very
Um,
little.
he- yeah, he's not yet ready to go on a rehab assignment, and when he does that, you would think he would need several weeks to build up. So I think we're looking at late August at the earliest in terms of when he might be able to impact, and that's probably not a guy you're going to be counting on too much.
John,
No,
does it
no.
does it does it test your fandom as a Harvard guy that they keep hiring Yale guys to run the team?
Not when they're winning, not the slightest when they're winning. And the Theo Epstein, thing way back when, I remember. I mean, I don't know if you're old enough, Chris, remember the excitement of when they hired him, and because it was the Moneyball and Billy Bean trees and Frenzy. I was willing to look past anything for someone super smart who was going to do things differently and fix it, and he ended up doing it. So no, we're all good. We're all good.
Well, they're at 3 out of 5 now, right? With him and Heim and Breslow, all
Yeah.
graduates of that fine university. So there's clearly a pattern there. Sean and I have gotten um, some emails from people in Washington circles. We've had senators email. We've had different people, different walks of life who this is the Red Sox are a unifying factor. We've heard from Tom Cotton. We know Chris Murphy's a huge Red Sox fan. Um, Politics aside, is this something in political circles that people get behind, they could find common ground on?
I baseball certainly is
Yeah.
right, and sports in general, certainly are. All the bets that the politicians make, and you can tell which politicians are real sports fans and aren't. The people who are authentic about it aren't. Like Michael Bloomberg, I always respected the guy's mayor of New York City, and he just never disavowed the Red Sox. he always just admitted that he was a Red Sox fan. Bill de Blasio, for whatever reason, when he was mayor of here,
Yeah, well,
continued to say
he
he was
had
a
some
Red Sox fan.
Massachusetts roots, so I think
Yeah,
that they both did. Obviously, Bloomberg was born in Medford, I think.
Medford.
So yeah, it was two New York mayors in a row who were unapologetic Red Sox fans, which was different.
Right. And by the way, you'd never be able to get away with that in Boston, I don't think. I mean,
Well,
I
I
have a hard
agree.
time believing you
Yep.
would do that. So, I always respected that. But, so I covered George W. Bush in the 2000 election. I was a producer back then, but I was with him. I was basically followed him every day for about 18 months. And Bush was a genuine baseball fan. Like, he owned the Rangers. He really did love the game. And that was during the height of Pedro Martinez when he was doing all these magical things. And George Bush, George W. Bush used to like seek me out to talk about the games the night before. And I remember one event, and I can't remember where it was, but it was the morning after Pedro had pitched at night, and Bush is walking on stage to give a speech, right? And he looks out and sees me on the press riser, and I think Pedro must have had one of those nights where he pitched 8 innings, struck out 14 guys, gave up one hit, and Bush goes to me. He goes like, he makes a throwing arm motion and nods his head. I'm like, yeah, yeah, right. I'm like, yes, exactly. You should be thinking about different things,
Hmm.
like maybe how you're going to run the country. But I agree with you, Pedro had a great night.
Are there any less publicized? We mentioned Senator Cotton from Arkansas and Senator Murphy, who geographically that makes a little more sense, being in Connecticut, being big Red Sox fans. Any other Washington people you want to unmask as maybe closet Red Sox fans or actual Red Sox fans?
I would never let anyone be a closeted Red Sox fan. I would out them like the minute I knew. I can't. I'm trying to think. If I don't. I'm trying to think of who I talk about it. Would be John King, who, obviously a great CNN guy, does our magic well. John King's a legit, like Dorchester kid,
Right.
huge Red Sox fan, goes whenever he can. Um, David Axelrod is a huge Cubs fan. Was at two of the three games this past weekend, and I was writing David when they weren't winning. I'm like, David, come on, man, what can you do? Like, help me out here. Uh, when I have members of when I have members of the U.S. The Massachusetts delegation on in the show, I will often make a reference, to the Red Sox and see what they think. And, I will say I'm not going to mention again. I'm not going to name names here, but I think there are some of them who are bigger fans than others. I don't know that they're all equally huge Red Sox fans. So, I think voters should keep that in mind.
When you talk about, I mean, I know you're based in New York, but so much of what you cover revolves around Washington. And that city is a city full of people migrating from other parts of the country, obviously for work. They grow up elsewhere, bring their fandom with them. Some come and hop on a bandwagon. What's the culture like being a sports fan in DC, where you have very few native Washingtonians, but you have people bringing their previous allegiance from wherever they grew up or wherever state they're representing?
I will say that having been down there in different stretches, the Nationals, to their credit, although they kind of stink right now, did a good job building up a fan base of those transients. I think of people who were relatively new Washington D.C. residents, and they latched on to a team that was likable, and built itself up to a World Series. And so I think they did a good job with that. The one I lived in Washington, for a summer and a half in 1990. And they were the Washington Redskins then. And one of the things that was remarkable about sports in DC is, we like to think we're big fans of the Red Sox and everything in Boston. I gotta say, those football fans in Washington were just, through the roof. I mean, the Redskins pregame would start on Wednesday morning for a Sunday game, and the Redskins wrap-ups would go until Tuesday night. I mean, it was like wall-to-wall coverage
Right.
of them, and so there's an intense hunger for sports in that city. That for a while, football was the only thing to feed the national stuff. And Orioles, there was when I was down there at different stints, people were taking the train up for the Orioles games. And there are still some, people living in DC who are O's fans. And that was more of a thing when I was there more physically, the Orioles and the Red Sox, there was a rivalry there with Boston. But yeah, in DC, it is fun with DC when you get all the people coming from around the country, the different sort of fan bases that there are. The Red Sox, in the last 2 decades, and even before they won their first World Series, they became something of a true nation. Though it wasn't just a Boston fandom, and you really, no matter where you go in the country, you do you did start to see then Red Sox fans, Red Sox hats, and it's much more of a national thing now than it ever was.
You talked about, as I mentioned, being completely, separating and not wanting to cover the thing you love in the Red Sox. And, I think everybody has those things that, if you covered it, it would be different. Did you ever have designs on doing sports journalism when you were younger?
No, no, I wasn't. I didn't think I wanted to be a journalist when I was younger. I sort of happened. So,
Yeah.
so no, I didn't. I didn't necessarily. Politics was sort of always my interest, and then I got into political journalism, and then fell in love with the rest of journalism. Also, there was a time when I did a lot of sports when the sports world and the news world intersected. News, when I say news world, I mean political news and intersected. I used to get assigned a lot of those stories. I was at ABC for 17 years, and
Hmm.
and so the steroids there. Actually, the steroid story and Balco was one of the first real assignments as a very young reporter that I got as sort of the lead reporter, the Mitchell Report in all of that. So I was deep into the steroid saga in baseball and all of sports as a young reporter, and it actually it made a huge impression on me, and I learned a lot about journalism through that. I mean, everyone I covered, every athlete and PR agent was swearing to me that their athlete never did steroids, never touched it, and then over time, we're all forced to admit it in one way or the other. I'm like, oh, this is an education in truth and how people deal with issues surrounding truth. So I did a
This
lot
is
there.
just like this is just like Washington. People lying to me all the time.
That's it. Honestly, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Some of the people who ended up repping some of the athletes had come from the world of politics.
Hmm.
Chris Lahane, who I'm still friendly with. Chris Lahane was like a spokesperson for John Kerry and helped do press for the Al Gore campaign. Ended up being Marion Jones, the sprinter, the Olympic athlete, was doing press for her, which was always notable. And then so sport. I covered that. I covered Tiger Woods when he had the whole thing with the car getting smashed up in his return. So it was always when sports became scandalous beyond the sports world that I ended up covering it. The one time I got to cover sports in Boston was in 2013 after the marathon bombing. I was up there anchoring from Boston for like 3 weeks after, and I was outside Fenway, the David Ortiz game. And the nicest thing that any organization has ever done for me is CNN sent me to Game 6 of the World Series. And I actually, so I got to see them win in Fenway, which is the one of their four World Series they actually clinched in Fenway. And I was at that game. Although I didn't cheer, sorta. I mean, I was there to cover it, so I kind of wasn't cheering, as far as you know. Um, but I anchored from Fenway the next morning from the field. I was standing on the first base line anchoring that next morning, and that was cool because it was news because of obviously the marathon bombing and the fact they had won, and I got to be there, and I did have to be objective, right? I was there, and CNN was into the fact that, oh, here's a Red Sox fan, who got to experience this whole year, and here they won.
How often do you get back home and get to Fenway?
So my family's all still in Massachusetts. My mother and my sister are in Newton. My dad's out at Devon's. So I'm up a lot, like a lot. Every few weeks. But because I'm there mostly to see family, I don't actually get to Fenway. It's been a few years since I've been to Fenway. I have 18-year-old twin boys who are Red Sox fans, but albeit they grew up in New York, but they're not. huge fans. It's not like a live and die thing. And growing up, I always thought, oh, I'm going to have kids and we're going to go to all kinds of games, of every sport. It'll be great. My family, my boys, it was always one of these things where by the fourth inning, everyone always wanted to go. And I'm like, no, we paid ungodly money for these tickets. We got to stay 9 innings. And I would always lose. So somewhere over the last 15 years after they started getting older, I started falling in love with minor league baseball for a bunch of reasons. But one of the reasons is the tickets are like $8. So if
Right.
so if everyone wants to leave in the fifth inning, like it's not a big deal. It's like, okay, no problem. So I've been to a lot of minor league games over the last few. Been to Worcester a few times, which is a great place. Polar Park. I would make a point of seeing, the short season single A going away kind of ruined things for me because I like the Lowell team, but also I got to see a lot more of the affiliates, like in Coney Island, the Brooklyn
Right. The New York
Cyclones.
10 League team. Right.
Yeah, so I used to get to see Red Sox affiliates play there, but not as much anymore.
Right.
People are very split on this, but your thoughts on the new Yankee Stadium?
I hate it. I mean, again, I'm saying this. This is me as a fan, not me as a journalist. Like, this
Hmm.
is not CNN
Well,
speaking. I'm not speaking.
you haven't had press dining there, so that's
I
probably
have
a
had.
big fact.
Oh,
Oh,
well,
you have?
so I actually, before the new Yankee Stadium opened, I got to do a story for Good Morning America on the new food at Citi Field versus Yankee Stadium, and which was
Hmm.
better. And objectively, Citi Field was better, but Yankee Stadium was pretty good, I have to say. Like but going there as a fan, the seats stink. I mean, you can't to build a stadium like that at this point. I'm shocked that anyone could get away with it because the good seats are so expensive. Real people can't sit there. So, and when you turn on the TV, they're always empty
Yeah.
because the
Like a
super rich
moat.
people, yeah, a lot of blue there because they're all underneath eating the incredible food. It is very good, but they're all underneath eating and it's empty seats. And so, if you're a fan, a real fan paying for tickets, you're 2,000 feet up in the sky, which isn't how the rest of the new stadiums around the country are. So I was just surprised that they built it like that. And then I'm just gonna, again, full disclosure, it doesn't help my feelings about Yankee Stadium that I got kicked out of Yankee Stadium once
Oh, no.
during a game. It was a Red Sox game, and I think it was 2006. And I was with a friend in another friend's seats, and they weren't good because there are no good seats in Yankee Stadium. But Kevin Youkilis got hit, got beamed, and I yelled. But not like, I don't swear in public. I yelled like, oh, I went something like that. And then the guy behind me, who, we've been chatting and getting along the whole game, the guy behind me starts like yelling at me, like just, standing up and yelling at me. And I'm not a fighter. Like I'm a lover, not a fighter. So I wasn't gonna like fight him back, but I'm like, whoa. And it's possible who maybe said something cynical or snide, but he kept on yelling and yelling more, and then security comes over and takes me out. Like I'm the guy being accosted here. Um, and I get taken out. I will say that as I was being let out by security, after like 30 seconds of semi horror, I realized it was one of the great moments of my life, and and was
And
proud.
you wear it with a badge of honor now.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
could have said to the guy, "I will call George W. Bush right now, and this will be
That's
taken care
right.
of."
Yeah, yeah. He will make sure he will pardon me for
Yes.
this.
Well, John, we'll leave you with this. Uh, be in the predictions business for 1 second here, and give me two things. Number one, who they're going to get at the deadline, and number two, how the rest of this season goes and where they end up.
The second one first. I think they get into the wild card. I think they can get it. I mean, boy, is the American League mediocre. Um, but I also think that based on what we've seen this week, they're a good team. They're not a great team, and when they play these great teams, it's going to be hard for them. But I think that they can put together enough wins to get in the wild card. And in terms of who they get, I'm not. I just don't have eyes on enough of the other teams and know enough about what's out there. You guys were talking Yandy Diaz, right? Do I have that right? I mean, that something
Mhm.
Yeah.
like that would be,
That's one potential target for first
yeah,
base. Yeah.
for the first base. And I don't know. I don't think they do like the Carlos Santana thing. I mean, just I don't know how much of a rental they want. Seth Lugo, um, who turns out they should have, if they got him last year for at the bargain price,
Right.
it would have been good.
Oh, it's
You know,
tough to outbid the Royals, John.
Yeah, no, I know. Yes. Well, Rich Hill, man, we can get Rich
Hmm.
Hill back. You
Yeah,
know,
yep,
how,
he's out there.
how come we can't get guys like that? I think it's that level of thing, and and Sean said it. You said it the other day. I mean, to guess like what middle reliever they're going to get is impossible because they'll get someone whose name I won't have ever heard of. Who they could you could invent like five middle relievers and tell me that they have wars of like 1.3, and I'd be like, okay, I believe you. I mean,
That
they
sounds
may.
decent.
Yeah, that's great. I've never seen them on a mound. No one else has, but I believe you that there are these five guys out there.
Yeah, well, we'll have it all covered. John, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and enjoy the rest of the year.
Great having
Listen,
you, John. Thanks.
thank you both very much for everything you do. And like I said, it's a real pleasure to get to see you.